The biggest fears regarding the status of Joel Embiid's knee have seemingly been confirmed, and there is some severe doubt over his future status. ESPN's Shams Charania just dropped a report discussing the state of Joel Embiid's knee and why the Sixers are going to have some pretty hard-hitting conversations in the near future. Now, this is not something that just has to do with this season. Yes, the goals of this season are basically out the window. That is an open and shut conversation. I'm recording this after a loss at the buzzer on a Nick Claxton putback last night to ultimately lose to the Brooklyn Nets and drop further down in the standings. This is not about salvaging this season. This is a conversation that I think we have to have about the future of Joel Embiid playing basketball, period. But to dive into exactly what we do have, just want to start off with the report from Shams Charania, who tweets out that the 76ers and Joel Embiid are consulting doctors and considering alternative options on his injured knee, sources tell ESPN. Sides have hope for progress on Embiid's body, but his efforts to play and current treatments, including injections, have not provided any improvement. Now, a couple things to note here. For starters, I've been quite vocal about this and stand by the frustrations about the lack of clarity for what the status is for Joel Embiid. I think, to be completely honest here, reading between the lines and a lot of the terminology and what is being said, is I think Joel Embiid himself and the Sixers are not really sure what the situation is. That's probably the most frightening realization of this entire thing. That also, I do want to note with this specific report that we did see the legendary quote from Paul George after last night's loss that was asked for advice. He is a guy who's come back from some pretty severe surgeries. The broken leg at the Olympics is obviously one that pops to mind there. And did he have any advice that he could share with Joel that could help in his progress, returning to the floor, fighting through it, all these things? And Paul George, as he does have such a way with words, bluntly replied, drugs. Well, what this points out right here in the Shams Charania report is that Joel Embiid is doing everything possible. Getting injections has already been on the table. That is something that not just Paul George playing through injections, but Joel Embiid himself. Now, granted, doing this in February, when we're not even in the playoff hunt, is maddening on a variety of reasons. From just like a usage of assets, getting as many games out of these guys as possible, we're probably using them up a little bit quicker than we should be there. And just the stance of this is not a sustainable way to keep guys on the floor. There comes a point where these injections specifically are not done to solve the problem. They're to cover up the pain, to allow you to keep playing through it. And while I tip my hat and commend those guys for continuing to fight, there comes a point where you got to fix the issue, and the Sixers should be absolutely zeroed in on that with Joel Embiid. Now, as far as the full conversation brought on by Shams, he did pop on ESPN and talk a little bit deeper about it, and what he did say here was, quote, sources tell me the 76ers and Joel Embiid are now consulting with doctors and considering options such as surgery on his left knee. I'm told that Embiid is scheduled to have test imaging done on the knee this week, and that at this point, both sides will collaborate with specialists on the best path forward. Embiid has had multiple treatment solution options that he's tried throughout the season. His knee just has not been right. That's included regular and frequent shots in that knee, just has not yielded any improvement. The 76ers and Embiid so far listening to doctors' beliefs that surgery is not required or recommended as of yet. But even again, after last night's loss to the Nets, I'm told Joel Embiid experienced more swelling in that knee. He didn't practice. Now he's going to have more imaging done. The 76ers are going to have to make the best decision, and they're going to do what's smart here with Joel Embiid as well as their aspirations, this team. Obviously, we know the standings-wise that they're now floundering, and he's under contract for several more years on their cornerstone. So the biggest message here that I think is quite clear, while the Sixers are not saying it, that was the last time we will see Joel Embiid play in a game this season. I think it is quite clear there, and frankly, that is the right decision. Even zooming out a little bit in this short term, think about the version of Joel Embiid when he first returned to the floor this season versus the guy that was seen last night. He's gotten worse from a mobility standpoint, and when having that conversation, that should be basically the end of it to me. If this guy is not right, do whatever it takes to get him here. Now, the problem with that is there may not be an overall option. To kind of give the point on this, shout out to Zach Chavalella, who I agree with this premise here. He initially tweets, the Sixers and Embiid have had differing opinions on this subject for some time. It's good that they're finally moving past the, quote, hope it gets easier to play on stage, but unfortunately, there's not an obvious treatment from my understanding either. And he quote tweets himself to say, I've had many people say to me that Embiid should just, quote, have the surgery. The only problem is that the surgery may not exist. It depends on the condition of his knee, but unless there's debris or other tear, neither have been reported, then there is no clear surgical option. And for kind of the difference in meniscus surgery, this is a little bit of the effects of like the cleanup surgeries that he had, including as recently as last year after Jonathan Kuminga fell on his knee to come back for that playoff run. I think that is the origin of a lot of these frustrations, but this is years of damage that is really catching up to him at the worst time possible for the Sixers team. It's incredibly maddening from the overall perspective that there's a real chance this may be the beginning of the end of Joel Embiid's career. I do think that is the conversations being had. And for the Sixers specifically, anything possible to preserve whatever you can get out of him, you need to do. That if that means him not being ready at the start of next season, that is a small price to pay here. Now, with all that being said, that still involves them finding some sort of solution. And as of now, we've got nothing. That until all these things that we're dealing with, like my frustrations with there not being a clear diagnosis, it seems like there just isn't one, that there is not a clear injury. It would be a much easier linear approach to this if we knew Joel Embiid has an ACL tear, he's got to get this surgery, and then he bounces back with this timeline. That's not the case. It feels like they don't have any sort of feel for when his knee's going to swell up, when it's not going to respond positively, and all those things. Overall, I see no positive for him stepping back on the floor this season at all. Beyond just the health injuries, or the health issue, which should be the clear priority here, let's just be real about how this season is. And to look at the overall standings as a whole, I'm going to pull up Tankathon here, and you can see with these that these are kind of the highlights of this. But the Tankathon odds, we can see the Sixers have now dropped to the sixth best pick. They have a 37.2% chance of getting a top 4 pick. They have a 9% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. At the time of me recording this, the Raptors are currently playing the Suns. Will say I was tapped in watching that game in the second quarter with the Raptors holding a lead. The Suns are bad enough that I could see them blowing that as their team in a disaster as well. But we're doing that dance, prioritizing maybe can we increase our lottery odds far more than we should be about winning. So for this season, all mindsets should change. And by the way, this is not just going to be, you can't just run this back next year in the same way. For the most part, they kind of are. You're going to bank on little things like Jared McCain coming back, Tyrese Maxey, can he take a step forward? Paul George, a cleaner injury luck next year, hopefully. But guys are going to have to, there's going to have to be some turnover. Nick Nurse, I can't imagine, is returning next year, and I do believe that is probably the right call. That's less about like a direct critique of Nick Nurse. He has been handed the worst hand possible as a head coach, but the reality is you got to change something, and for what it's worth, Nurse also hasn't been a solution to any of these issues either. So I have been underwhelmed in that regard, and it does feel like there just needs to be a little bit of a new voice here. But the story of this entire video, and really this entire season, is it is about the status of Joel Embiid. It's tough not to feel bad from him for a human being level, that this is an all-time great talent that we may not see get to achieve the heights that it feels like he was built to do. That we've been frustrated for years and years of not having the proper roster around him. I kind of think we have it, and he's not ready to kind of carry that torch here. And by the way, when kind of noting that direction here, think about how you can make this better. There's obviously a world where Joel Embiid can still be a fine basketball player. I don't know if I see a world which he can be the best player on a championship contending team. And when actually think about how you like develop and build a team around him, no, he's never going to be the caliber of scorer that he once was. He's probably never going to be averaging 33 points per game, leading the league in scoring like he has these past couple years. But the most underrated aspect of Joel Embiid's game throughout the entirety of his career has been him on the defensive end of the floor. That he's proven capable of anchoring an elite caliber defense, being the big man that everything centers around. And that has been the exact opposite of what we've seen this season. Frankly, that is what has stood out to me more than anything. And like last night, the Nets scoring 40 points in the first quarter, 70 in the first half, I believe they finished with yesterday. The Sixers have absolutely allowed 70 in the first half plenty of times this season. If Embiid cannot be the anchor of a defense moving forward, you're going to have to do some really creative and difficult stuff from a roster construction standpoint. And these are a lot of problems that they're going to have to face moving forward. For the short term, we don't know anything concrete. That this is just the Sixers evaluating as many options as possible. I do think they will put off surgery as much as they're possible. However you feel about that, I do think the right approach, or what the process is in their mind, is there's less risk when they're trying these alternate techniques right now. Whatever that means behind the scenes, whether it is, putting them under ice, putting on a heating pad, doing injections, these type of things, it doesn't carry that same risk of a surgery potentially going wrong and Embiid never being able to play again. That's what they're worried about in the back of their mind, and I think that's why they're going to put it off. And again, there has to be an actual surgery that can fix whatever the issue is before it makes sense to put him under the knife there. The reality is that should be 100% of the attention. Don't even worry about trying to get him back on the floor this year. This season has gone from bad to worse rather quickly, and it does feel like all focus should shift to next year. So while I wish we could simulate from here, they got to buckle up and deal with whatever the reality of this is, and they're going to have to make some pretty difficult decisions about the future of the franchise once that is all revealed. But the bottom line line is I will be here from start to finish breaking things down here on Sixers Digest and want as many people along for the ride. This has been as bad as I possibly could have imagined could be the case for a Sixers season, but do want as many people a part of it as possible. So if you have not already, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Just 28.9% of you guys watching the videos have subscribed just yet. Need everyone to help get through the Sixers season with me, so want as many of you tapping in as possible. Appreciate you for watching this video. Drop a like if you have not already, and I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.